is Titans Talk.
Hey there and welcome into Titans Talk. Steve Lewan here with you. Glad you are here with us on this Monday night on NewsChannel 5+. And man, where do we begin after Sunday's game down in South Florida? 7 hours, 8 minutes, 2 lightning delays spanning 3 hours, 59 minutes. It was the longest NFL game ever played. And it was an even longer afternoon for the Tennessee Titans. A day that began with so much anticipation for the first ever game for Mike Vrabel, this new look Titans team, their new uniforms, new faces in so many different places, new systems, look at their new offense, all of that. And it was just marred throughout the course of the day by the weather, by what I thought was poor officiating throughout, some sloppy play at times, and then injuries that mounted. And I think it's a little difficult to determine what actually happened. I mean, the Titans lost the game 27-20, but how much was the game influenced by the circumstances? How much did the calls factor in? How much did the weather factor in? And certainly the injuries played a part as well. So what does it really mean about where the Titans are now, sitting at 0-1? I think that's a fair question, and we pose it to you tonight. 737-7767, the number. Call us up, be a part of the conversation here tonight on Titans Talk. Now, the injury is a massive factor and perhaps the alarming factor moving forward. The biggest one, Delanie Walker suffered a dislocated ankle in the fourth quarter when he was tackled on his fourth and final catch of the day. He was rolled up on and the ankle just buckled beneath him. He knew it right away. They brought out the cart almost immediately for him. Just a sickening scene to see a team captain and the guy who has been your leading pass catcher over the past several years since joining the Titans be in that situation. And to get carted off the field, where do you go from there if you're the Tennessee Titans? It is a difficult thing to watch and see, and so many guys are going to have to step up now in his absence. Also, ligament damage that goes along with that. He is expected to have surgery probably later this week, if not next week, and is almost certainly done for the season. The Titans placing Delanie Walker today on injured reserve. So a massive loss there. But that's just the beginning, because Taylor Lewan also suffered a concussion on that blindside crackback block by Andre Branch on Rashad Jones's first interception return. He was out cold on the turf and had to leave the game because of that. He now enters the NFL's concussion protocol, which is totally an indefinite type of thing. If he recovers quickly, he could be back possibly in the next couple of days and be able to play on Sunday when the Texans come to town. But concussions are also one of those things that it may not heal that quickly. And this could be, instead of a couple-day thing, it could be a couple of weeks thing. And you already have Jack Conklin out on the right side of your offensive line, potentially have to be without both of your offensive tackles, highly respected offensive tackles at that, for a considerable period of time. Marcus Mariota leaves yesterday. He gets hit on a run play where he handed the ball off but was carrying out a fake. Takes a shot from William Jones there. It was low, but apparently not low enough to draw a flag. It was late, but apparently not late enough to draw a flag on a potential ball carrier as a quarterback, not just a quarterback. Titans a little bit frustrated by that, but the biggest thing was he landed awkwardly on his elbow. I don't know if you want to call it a funny bone injury or what, but basically the ulnar nerve was bothered. And he struggled to have feeling in his hand and struggled to grip the ball the rest of the game. He did try to tough it out, but threw 2 costly interceptions in that time. So how healthy will he be this week as you move forward? And then Adoree Jackson on defense left the game with a shoulder injury after a punt return. That's on top of all the injury issues the Titans have already had throughout the course of the season. And I guess that is where I want to start tonight as my biggest takeaway from the game. And I want to get your thoughts and your takeaways in terms of what you liked, what you didn't like, how concerning the 1 week is, what you think about Walker's injury, all of that stuff. Call us up tonight. 737-7767 is the number. But my biggest takeaway I want to express is, as I watched the game and all the craziness that happened in a coaching debut and looking at the new systems and the calls that went awry and then the weather delays throughout, my prevailing feeling for much of the second half of the game was, gosh, this is just a frustrating day in which everybody was at that stadium for way too long. And you know what? Either the Titans are going to lose in this wild, frenetic game, wild atmosphere, unforeseen circumstances, and I'm not sure you're going to know that much about him. It's going to be a disappointing loss, but I'm not sure it necessarily means doom for the rest of the season just because of the circumstances of the day and the circumstances of the game. And then there were parts of me when they would run back a kickoff for a touchdown or answer with a score or whatever that thought, and maybe they'll be able to come away from this with this sort of stunning victory against all odds in a hostile territory with some of the most adverse conditions you will ever deal with in a professional sporting event. And that'll be a huge boost to them. But at the same time, I'm not sure if that will tell me anything more about this team, because how much of the potential comeback or whatever would have to do with the circumstances surrounding the game or who was in the game at that time because of some of the injuries. But then Delanie Walker went down. And when that happened, my tune changed a little bit, because all of a sudden I stopped thinking so much about the game itself, 1-0 or 0-1, and what the result would be, and started thinking more about what's the lasting impact of this game for the Titans. The game itself lasted 7 hours and 8 minutes. There's an impact to that, because you hear players in the NFL talk all the time about how physical the games are on Sunday. It's oftentimes Wednesday, maybe even Thursday of the week before you can recover physically from playing in an NFL game on Sunday. And that's when it goes off as scheduled. And you're not starting and stopping and starting again and stopping again and going through all that, sitting in a cold locker room, going back out, trying to warm up, and then playing again. They essentially played parts of 3 games yesterday over 7 hours. That has to have an impact, I think, moving forward for the guys who came out healthy. But then you look at the guys who didn't. Mariota didn't. Lewan didn't. Delanie Walker's done for the year. Those are arguably the 3 most important pieces to the Titans' offense. All of them impacted by the game yesterday. And especially when you look at Walker, who is your leading pass catcher over the past 5 years since he's been with the Titans. On top of that, he's a team captain. The loss of him, I think, is huge. And so now I wonder, who cares about the loss necessarily of 27-20, the final score? That stings a bit because it's a game you could have won on the road. But there's still 15 more chances. My question is, what's the impact of playing that long? What's the impact of the injuries that come from that game in terms of this team meeting its full potential this year? You already know you maybe don't have your best weapon in the passing game for the entire season in Delanie Walker. But on top of that, for me, as we saw yesterday, this is still a work in progress with the new systems. Matt LaFleur's offense, Dean Pease's defense. They haven't completely clicked with the new systems yet. How long does that take? I think that was a question going into Sunday. It's still a question coming out, but what are the chances they can make it click in 2 or 3 weeks early on in the season when you have all these injuries, as opposed to it clicking middle of the year or taking an entire season to figure it out? That's the concern I think you have out of this game, is that with the injuries, it's longer to put it all together because you're missing reps on the practice field again. We had that problem in the preseason. You're worried about it, but a lot of people talked about just getting healthy to game 1. Don't worry about the practice reps. Just be healthy when you get to the regular season. Well, now you've gotten to the regular season, and you're not healthy, and you're not going to be healthy for a while here. So now you're not just foregoing some of the reps on the practice field. Now you're missing reps of key guys on the game field. So how big of an impact does that have on this Titans team as they try to click in and get into a rhythm with these new systems and with this new coaching staff? That, I think, is a big concern, at least for me, as I leave that game. 737-7767 is the number. We want to hear from you tonight. What are your thoughts on that? What did you think sticking around and watching 7 hours of football yesterday between the Titans and the Dolphins? Go to the phones, and we begin tonight with Jared. Jared, thanks for the call. You're first up here on Titans Talk here tonight.
I'm on.
Jared, go ahead. You're on the phone. Hello, Jared. You're on the air.
Yeah, this is Jared. Mariota's obviously hurt. He's not producing. If he doesn't produce the rest of the year, do you think we're going to go quarterback first round? And why isn't Derrick Henry getting more touches?
Well, I will say this about Marcus Mariota. He didn't have a great game yesterday, but a big chunk of that was with the injury. They've pretty much settled in on Marcus Mariota is going to be the quarterback next year, but he's got to show something to this team to put in an investment long term. I think he's the quarterback this year and next year, and they're going to ride it out with Matt LaFleur and see if this offense can bring the most out of him. Remember, yesterday was just one game, and in Mariota's case, it was basically a half of a game. So I don't think you need to overreact in that way yet. But he does have to show something at some point for this team to put a long-term investment into him. As for the running back question, I think yesterday was twofold when it comes to Dion Lewis sort of taking over for Henry in the second half. One, he was the hot hand.
His rookie contract's about to end.
One, he was the hot hand, Dion Lewis was yesterday, in what he did. But the second part to that is he's just a more versatile back, and the Titans were essentially playing from behind in the second half. He gives you a better pass-catching option, and he's a better blocker. And so those two things allowed him to be on the field more often. You're going to see more of Derrick Henry, obviously, throughout the course of the season. But yesterday was a Dion Lewis day, and I think he showed why they paid him the money they did in free agency because of his versatility and his production in the game yesterday. In my mind, he was probably the biggest bright spot on the Titans offense. Jared, do you have anything else?
Thank you for having me on.
All right, thank you for the call. Let's move on here and say hello to Mitch. Mitch, thank you for the call. You are next up here on Titans Talk.
How you doing, Steve?
Doing great. Thanks for the call, buddy.
Well, you know, they hosed our boy Henry yesterday on that 75-yard touch. You know, I mean, that was a touchdown. That was not holding on to Delanie Walker. That was a face mask on Miami defense. Pitiful refereeing in the NFL is the reason that people are not going to invest in this. Why would you? I mean, we just saw us get completely hosed yesterday by the officiating in the NFL. That's why people are walking away and not watching these games. The guys, if we're going to spend 7 hours to watch the Titans game over lightning delays, then we need to be able to stop the thing and go back and look at that play. If they would go back and review that, they wouldn't have been called different, and that man had a 75-yard touchdown. The block on Taylor. If they would have stopped and reviewed that, instead of, I know it was a brawl, they went and did the offset and BS instead of ejecting number 50. Because if you really looked at it on the sidelines yesterday, when he came off the field, I can read lips. He said something, "There you go, boss hog," and he said it. And I know you have a way to look back at the tape. Look and see what he says on the sideline.
Oh, no, you know, I'll tell you exactly what he said on the sideline. He yelled at him body bag, as if he just, you know, ended a guy's career or life on the sideline. That is not a look the NFL wants. There's no question.
Okay, and and it's ridiculous. That's the reason that people are not investing in the NFL. That's the reason the ratings are so dang low. Who's going to watch this? This is ridiculous. I mean, why am I going to go spend $2,000-$3,000 or more on season tickets and the referees give it to whoever they want to give it to? It's ridiculous. Why invest, Steve? I mean, that's where I am. It was disgusting to watch that game yesterday.
Yeah.
Even though it took 7 hours.
Yeah,
it was terrible.
It wasn't good, Mitch. I appreciate the call. Jerome Bogar and his crew, he in particular, haven't been assigned a playoff game for the last 4 seasons. And I think you saw why yesterday. It was an embarrassing effort by the officials. Now, I don't think that is what cost the Titans the game. There were plenty of mistakes on the offensive side of the ball. There were clearly 3 interceptions. You give up a 101-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. All of those things played major impacts of why they lost the game as well. The injuries were critical factors into what happened. But you can't ignore the officiating, and I thought the officiating played a huge part. The Titans dominated the first quarter of that game, but when they did not score at 4th and goal down there by the Miami goal line late there in the first quarter, that was a huge turning point. I think you had the opportunity, even getting down there, to kick the field goal, keep the momentum going. But once you didn't, you rely on the defense to get a stop. Multiple penalties, offsides penalty, neutral zone penalties kind of helped get him jump-started. But the key play to me was Malcolm Butler made a form tackle at essentially midfield at the start of the second quarter. Picked the guy up, drove him out of bounds, and landed him on his backside. It was textbook of how you would teach it. And he got flagged for unnecessary roughness. It was a 15-yard penalty that propelled the drive, and next thing you know, the Dolphins are in the end zone in a game that really had been dominated up to that point by the Titans, was all of a sudden a 7-3 Miami lead. I thought that was a bad call. I didn't have a problem with the hit on Mariota at all. Some people thought it was late. Some people thought it was low. I thought he was a ball carrier in that situation, and you can't expect the defensive player who has him as a responsibility to be able to let up in that period of time. So I was okay with that one. But the interception, the first one by Rashad Jones, first off, it should have been looked at from the beginning because it looked for all the world on replay like Tajay Sharp touched him down on the field. So there should have been no return in the first place, apparently. At least it deserved to be reviewed, in my opinion. But secondly, the crackback block on Lewan, blindside hit against a defenseless player, that is the epitome of the type of hit that the National Football League is trying to outlaw from the game. They want to make it penalties. They want to fine players, all of that stuff. And you see a huge human like Lewan get hit like that and essentially lay lifeless on the turf for a few seconds. That's scary. And the idea that they did not flag it and did not actually assign a penalty to that. And then you heard the TV broadcast brought in Dean Blandino, their rules expert. And he said that they put in replay for this year to allow them to look at things like that to make sure they catch it. And they didn't do that at the league headquarters either. To me, it was just horribly executed from that perspective. And then the extra visual for the league that you have the Dolphins players celebrating the hit and celebrating a guy who's very clearly injured down on the field. And then you have the Titans players wanting to fight back in retaliation for it. And then you have a guy walking to the sideline as the guy who leveled the hit, screaming back body bag to the player who's walking off with some help towards the locker room with a concussion. I mean, if that is not exactly Roger Goodell's worst nightmare on the football field, I don't know what is. So to me, that was awful. I thought the hold on the Derrick Henry run was terrible. So there were a few very, very, very bad calls in this game. And unfortunately, in this case, I don't think it was some conspiracy theory or something like that. I don't think the refs are out to get the Titans. But unfortunately, in this case, the incompetence hurt them more than the Dolphins. And, let's be honest. I mean, if the Derrick Henry touchdown counts and there was no penalty there, that last field goal by Ryan Suckup is to send the game to overtime. And for everything that happened yesterday, One, the game would have actually been longer than it already was. But two, the Titans would have had an opportunity to win. And that's frustrating when the officials get in the way of that. It's not the reason they lost, and I give Mike Vrabel a lot of credit today because he took a few questions on this and sort of admitted his disgust or his inability to decipher some of the rules and how they're going to be applied by officials and how he then needs to teach it to his players. I thought he answered the questions very well, but after about the third one, he just said simply, I'm done talking about the officials. We're not going to talk about it. We did not lose the game because of the officials. There were other things that we needed to do better to give ourselves a chance to win. We're done with the officials. We're moving on. And I give him a lot of credit for that because in a day when nothing went right, that certainly didn't either. And he could make it a big deal. He could harp on it. He could talk to everybody about it. He could give the sound bites about it. But as he's trying to establish his team and his culture with the Titans, you've got to move on from what yesterday was. And I think he set the tempo for that today. We're off to a good start here on the show tonight. Titans Talk underway for the 2018 NFL season. 737-7767 is the number. Call us up. Be a part of the show. What did you think about the game yesterday? Everything that went on, from the weather to the injuries to the execution between the lines. Be a part of the show. Call us up and join in tonight. We've got much more on the way as well. Stay tuned. We're just getting started here on Titans Talk on News Channel 5+.